Hello everyone and welcome to my first ever sketchbook tour. It is finally done and I cannot believe it. It's my first sketchbook being completed. I used the Strathmore 400 series watercolor sketchbook and started it October 19th and finished it April 18th. So pretty much about 6 months difference. The first painting that I decided to do was actually in gouache. I hadn't used gouache for the longest time and decided to try it out in my sketchbook. It held up well on the paper, and I also added a little quote that I had gotten. We don't know who we are until we see what we can do. And yeah, that's how I decided to welcome in a new journey. After that, we move on to some graphite portraits. I went through my Pinterest board and found a couple of portraits that I had saved and used some graphite to kind of ease my way into the sketchbook a bit further, and did some watercolor paintings of a couple of ducks. And now we have a watercolor ink painting. This one I've never done before, and I actually followed along a Jess Carp video that she did. And I have a little thumbnail, just kind of get practicing, did some swatches, and I really love how this turned out. I even used some white acrylic paint for highlight details. I haven't done studies for the longest time and decided to do some hand studies. I even tried doing some colored pencils. I even swatched them out a bit, just really playing with some color and getting used to it. This is actually a part of my Your Nature series, and so I was testing out the first painting on the sketchbook just to kind of see what I would like to do for the first painting, as well as continuing on for the rest of the paintings in the mini series. So this practice was for drowning thoughts, and this is how she turned out in the end, and I really loved it and kept on going. To help welcome in the new year, I did a watercolor and colored pencil drawing of some berries, which was really fun, and then I did another watercolor ink landscape painting. I even swatched out all the stuff, all the colors, because I just love the way that the swatches honestly look with the sketch or even the painting. Moving right along, I honestly am not too proud of these little 1-minute sketches. It was when I was actually in a meeting and I was sitting in the back, so I drew mostly the back of people's heads, and I only gave myself a minute each. They do look very rough, but it's all a part of the process, and even having a sketchbook. I even did a brush pen drawing of some daisies, and yeah. I also did some more animal studies with some bears. I used charcoal, and I also did some squirrels with some graphite. I think the charcoal on the textured paper turned out not too bad in the end. Not going to lie, this page of my sketchbook is the one with the fullest amount of color. I did some watercolor and ink studies of some food and some drinks. I even added in a quote. It says, "Food brings people together on many different levels. It's nourishment of the soul and body. It's truly love," which I just feel is so true about food. And then for Valentine's Day, I went ahead and drew a couple of lovebirds. Loved doing that a lot. I love drawing animals. And then beside it, I did a landscape painting. This spread was a bit of experimentation with alcohol markers. I had gotten a set of Oahu markers and tried out different methods of using them. I've never used alcohol markers before, really. And I also did a bunch of yellow, added some lines for a bit more of a graphic look. I feel like that's where my style tends to lean towards now with markers. This spread is actually a video that I have up on the channel, just kind of showing the process of sketching out a couple of motorbikes, some cars, a little moped. It was so much fun doing some mechanical studies and really getting in there with the motorbikes with all the pipes and wires. And this is where we start the 100 heads challenge. And let me tell you, it was a challenge. I decided to split up the 10 heads per day for having 5 generally female faces and then 5 generally male faces. And then later on in the challenge, I switched from using graphite to ink. And at first, I really hated it. I was coming out of a very big art block and completely forgot how to draw faces. So it was warming me back up to doing art and doing portraits again. Here I decided to bring my sketchbook along with me to my first ever art market. It was so much fun and so enjoyable to see everybody else, all the other vendors, and their different art styles and mediums that they use. I did some studies of some people that were walking around, of some of the vendors, a little tulip that was nearby, and even journaled just a little bit about how great of an experience it was. And this spread is one of my favorites. I jumped back into using watercolor again and did a bird's eye view of the ocean and a little yellow moped once again. Here are some more animal studies. I did some red foxes, even wrote a couple of notes about foxes in general. And I did all of this because it goes towards the final painting of the mini Your Nature series. And this is how she turned out. Last but not least, the final page of the sketchbook. I did a watercolor painting just because I'm starting to get back into using watercolors after using some acrylics here recently. And it's actually a repainting of the first page of the sketchbook because I just was not very proud of the gouache and went in for some watercolor, and I loved how it turned out very pastel and light and airy. And that is the final sketchbook. I hope you all enjoyed tagging along and seeing how she turned out. And I will see you in the next sketchbook.